So far we have seen how AI developed from its early start until the 90s and 2000s, and we have dug a little bit deeper into how some of the algorithms developed then for artificial intelligence, like the min-max algorithm that was used with the Deep Blue computer to beat Garry Kasparov at chess in 1997 worked. But was that all? Was AI just something that was flashy and that was basically used for games? Or was there more to it? Well, the thing is that there was quite a lot more. In the 70s, 80s and 90s, there was quite a lot going on with what was called expert systems. Expert systems were computer programs that used lots of data that required lots of expert inputs and were used to solve a variety of problems. And there were, during the heyday of artificial intelligence, many companies that worked doing just that. By the 1990s, the thing had peaked a little bit, and the industry, which has grown enormously, stopped growing, but it had resulted in many softwares that used these algorithms developed during this age for the solution of a variety of problems. And one domain where that was particularly important now, where AI was particularly important in the 90s, and where it is important now too in the 2020s, was medicine. And in medicine in the 90s, there were many expert systems which could detect coronary heart disease in groups of people by analyzing and crunching the data with heavy expert input, to diagnose melanoma or the expression of human lymphoma in the genes, do breast cancer diagnosis using the mammographies and see if the different white spots that were seen there could be classified as belonging to cancer or not. That's a subject that I have worked in. And there are many papers that you could check, and one of them is this one that I am citing here from Andrew Beck, and that used histopathology images that were first taken by a specialist, and then they were processed using computer vision, in this case something called superpixels that we probably will end up talking about in some of our courses. And then computer vision and artificial intelligence algorithm was used to detect which of these nuclei had very specific characteristics in this detection of stromal characteristics, stromal features, and which then were associated to survival. But this paper in particular and this image gives us a feel for the raw data that's then processed, and then we need lots of experts to go and look at these images and mark the important spots here, so that then the computer can learn to reproduce this expert knowledge. These expert systems that required lots of experts to provide lots of expert annotations and to work in the data for a long time before they were able to produce a performance that mimicked to some extent these decisions that the experts had made beforehand and had trained the system with. This was the probably, from my point of view, the peak of artificial intelligence in that first wave that ended in the 2000s. These expert systems were used significantly in many areas, but they never reached that disruptive potential, this society upending potential that had been hinted at in the beginning. They created significant advances, but they did not turn the world upside down. This medical imaging is today also one of the huge battlegrounds for the development of deep learning, the second at least wave of artificial intelligence, or let's call it the second major wave. But there were others. For example, I have here this slide that calls for open questions of AI, and this is let's remember that this comes from this presentation from Ellen Rich, and this slide in particular comes from her presentation that I think was done around the year 2000, thinking about open questions of AI. And I wanted to show what questions were open then and what has happened since, from 2000 to 2023, because that gives a very good idea of the latest developments, a very good example. So for example, for Ellen Rich, who's a very eminent professor, some of the issues with natural language processing for artificial intelligence, this is another huge area where artificial intelligence is used, and one of the most popular recently with the emergence, for example, of ChatGPT, which is a natural language processing software. Ellen Rich thought back in 2000 that some of these things were still open, and one of the things that she was trying to do was translate from English to Spanish and back to English and see if the system was able to be consistent or not. And for example, in this first example, in the 2000, the automatic translation system returns something like, from the sentence, Austin police are trying to find the person responsible for robbing a bank in downtown Austin, vía Spanish, el policía de Austin está intentando encontrar a la persona responsable de robar un banco en Austin Centrica, which is quite okay, into something that reads, the police of Austin is trying to find the responsible person to rob a bank in Centric Austin. So the meaning is mostly okay, but there are a couple of, let's say, not very nice grammar things and so on. And this was language processing in the 2000s. And if the sentence became a little bit more complex, then things got worse. A Florida teen charged with hiring an undercover policeman to shoot and kill his mother instructed the purported hitman not to damage the family television during the attack, police said on Thursday. So this is a long sentence with subordinate clauses and quite a lot of slightly randomly placed adjectives, which reads in Spanish: un adolescente de la Florida cargado con emplear a un policía de la cubierta interior para tirar y para matar a su madre mandó a hitman pretendida para no dañar la televisión de la familia durante el ataque, limpia dicho el jueves. So this is quite a disaster in terms of translation, and there are quite a lot of things that are just plain wrong. And when we turn it back into English, this reads: an adolescent of Florida loaded with using a police of the inner cover to throw and to kill his mother commanded to hitman tried not to damage the television of the family during the attack, clean, said Thursday. Some of the things are already wrong in the Spanish translation, but then when trying to come back from a text that doesn't make sense, the final result is pretty terrible. And Ellen Rich was making the point in her presentation back in 2000 that language processing was something that was an open question for AI. I started using this version of these slides in 2018, and I was telling my students then that from 2000 to 2018, this more complicated sentence was already, let's say, solved by modern natural language processing technology. The same sentence ends up: a Florida teenager accused of hiring an undercover police officer to shoot and kill his mother instructed the alleged hitman not to damage family television during the attack, police said Thursday. So there are minor things. For example, this family television probably should have the D, like it did, but the result is huge. It's very good. And the Spanish version, un adolescente de Florida acusado de contratar a un policía encubierto para disparar y matar a su madre, instruyó al presunto sicario para que no dañara la televisión familiar durante el ataque, dijo el jueves la policía. Is also very good. And this happened in 18 years, and the major difference between the technology used in the previous slide and here is the appearance in between that of deep learning. And this was still in 2018 a rather, let's say, initial version of the deep learning algorithms that have gotten better and better in the intervening 5 years. For example, back in 2018, I used to tell my students, but that's still not perfect, because if we do the same experiment with the same sentence, but with a smaller language like Catalan, we get from the Floridian thing un jove de la Florida acusat de contractar un policia incriminat per disparar i matar la seva mare va instruir el presumpte hitman que no danyés la televisió familiar durant l'atac, va dir la policia el dijous. So here there are already some things that are wrong. Hitman, for example, does have an equivalent word in Catalan, but it's not found, and some of the grammar is a little bit off. And when we go back to English, we get a young man from Florida accused of hiring an incriminating police officer, this is wrong, to shoot and kill his mother, instructed the alleged hitman with uppercase because this the translation machine, which actually is Google, is thinking is a name, not to damage family television, again, they is not there, during the attack, the police said on Thursday. So, okay, but not great. Still, 2018, when you used a smaller language, and I used to tell my students back then that this shows the importance of using transfer learning, because once you have a deep learning system that can translate between two languages, you can use that to extend the capabilities to other languages, and we will get into much more depth into this later at another presentation, but also that having enough data is very, very important. And Catalan, which is a smaller language on the internet, not as big as English or Spanish, had less data, and the automatic translation algorithms used by, in this case, Google, then could still not perfectly cope with some of the challenges of these smaller languages. However, I did the same thing today, and the problems are no longer there. The hitman word that was here in Catalan has now been substituted by sicari, which is the correct word in this case, and the final result, a Florida teenager accused of hiring an undercover cop to shoot and kill his mother told the alleged hitman not to damage the family television during the attack, police said Thursday. The family television. So here they are getting all of the grammar right. So from 2000 to 2018, with deep learning, many of the problems were solved. And from 2018 to 2023, with some advances in deep learning, of which we might speak about, probably the transformer networks that are used also in very recent software applications, and also by the fact that these softwares keep getting more and more and more data, some of the questions that were open in 2018 are no longer open and have already been solved.